For sure. So I'll start by saying this session is not about me, so I don't want to spend too much time going over my background. I want it to be as beneficial as possible for everyone on the call. But I guess just talk about my NCCU experience. Before that, I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. Played sports my entire life. Football was kind of my ticket to college. North Carolina Central University was one of the few scholarship offers I had. Came to Central in the fall of 2012. Had an amazing academic, athletic experience, but majored in accounting within the School of Business. Was involved on campus in a number of different activities and organizations. Trying to think if I missed anything with the Central part. I'm trying to give a high-level overview. But yeah, great experience there. Got a degree in accounting. Left in May of 2016. I played another year of football, so I was in a master's program for about 6 months. And my first job out of school was at a company named Monsanto as a kind of back-end accounting corporate finance role, which I received through NCCU alum named a guy by the name of Mr. Kevin Holloway, another mentor, like a father figure to me to this day. Did that for about 2 years. Got to do some amazing things. Traveled a ton. Got to spend like 2 months in Argentina working on a project there. But then kind of realized accounting wasn't my passion anymore and switched over to consulting. Then I moved from St. Louis to Washington, D.C. In late 2019. So I've been here almost 2 years now. I started out with a company named Accenture, doing financial services consulting, so working with banks, doing everything from strategy to risk work to credit services, anything you can think of within a bank, I probably touched it. And then most recently, I transitioned to McKinsey & Company, which is another consulting firm out of the DC office as well. And here I'm more of a generalist, doing kind of whatever I'm tasked with doing. I'm currently working on a pharmacy strategy project, and my client is actually in North Carolina. So if I was not, it was not COVID, I would be in North Carolina during the week. So that's a little bit about me. Don't want to make this about me, like I said before, just high level overview. We can turn this into a Q&A. We can turn it into a real talk session, whatever works. Nothing's off limits. I'll be as transparent and as blunt as possible. I remember when I was in school, a lot of people would come back and talk to us that would be like, 40, 50, 60 years old and would tell us these great stories, but it wasn't relatable. So I'm glad that the School of Business is doing kind of a younger alumni approach. And people that would come talk to us all the time where had these great feats. They were the CEO of this company, CFO of this company. So it's hard to kind of see yourself in these roles, but I just want to let everybody on the call know I'm just like you. I was a kid in the back of the accounting classes. I was half asleep, confused, figuring out what is going on. Am I going to pass? Am I going to graduate? And all these kind of good things. So nobody special. Just showed up every day and put a little bit of hard work in. And I promise it worked out for me, and I'm sure it'll work out for you. So I'll start with that, and then whatever questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer.
Okay. I have a question.
Yep.
Oh, you guys hear me okay?
Yep. Go ahead, Jaden.
One of my questions was, my name is Jaden Pledger, and I am a junior business administration major, concentration in marketing. And one of my questions was, what are some transferable skills that we can gain now while we're still in our undergrads or in our masters that would help us when we enter the corporate world?
That's a good question. Give me a couple seconds to think on that. Skills that are transferable. I think the first skill I think is transferable, and I was trying to find a way to synthesize it, but it's no secret that North Carolina Central or HBCUs in general we lack sometimes resources to get things done. So I think the quality you learn that you don't even realize you know how to figure things out. I don't know how to boil that down into one word or one sentence, but no matter what happens, you find a way to figure it out, whether that's figuring out financial aid, whether that's figuring out how to sneak into the cafeteria, whether that's figuring out how you're going to finish homework in 20 minutes, but it should have taken you 2 hours, whether that's any part of college or any part of your central experience that where you need to figure something out. I think it's something that's tangible in the workforce. I know a lot of my friends played sports like me, went to bigger schools. They went to Dukes and the Carolinas and Tennessees, and a lot of stuff was given to them or handed to them. So they just go one place. They would get their schedule. They would get their meal cards. They would get all this access to these things. Get all their books. So a lot of the ability to work through things, to persevere, to have the grit and grind to figure things out. They don't really have those skills, and they've expressed that, and we have those conversations. So I think that's one of the skills that might not be relevant now, or might not be easily seen, but I think it's a skill you'll find useful once you go into the workforce.
Thank you.
No problem.
If I could just piggyback off of that question, because I'm also interested in the fact that you're also an athlete, and I know that that is a lot when you're an athlete and a student, and getting internship, or trying to figure out what you're going to do with your career. What are some of the things that you got from being an athlete, and particularly the football team, that you were able to apply in the work you're doing to get the role, and maybe even now that you have the role?
Yeah, I think the first things that come to mind are kind of the traditional skills you learn from any sports or team environment, just hard work, teamwork, taking coaching, being disciplined, things like that. But I think when I look deeper into that, a couple of things that I think have been advantageous for me in my career is more importantly, one, being able to just work until the job gets done. So I've been in team rooms or office environments. People are, oh, I need to go for a walk. Nothing's wrong with these things. I need to go eat lunch. I need to go do these type of things. But like in sports, it's a limited amount of excuses that you can kind of give. So you just work until the job gets done. Whether it's practice, whether it's film, whether it's workouts, until you've perfected what you're trying to get accomplished, until the job is done, you just work at it. And I think that's a undervalued skill in the workforce. And I think the second one would be kind of, I guess, interpersonal skills of being able to motivate people. I think when I look at my time, I was a team captain. So when I look at my time at Central, waking up at 5:30 in the morning for a 6 o'clock workout, finding ways to get guys motivated for those type of activities when some might have been up till 2 a.m. or up till midnight in the library. We haven't had any breakfast. If I can motivate somebody, to go through an hour and a half workout and find ways to relate to people in those environments, I think in a air-conditioned meeting room where everybody's got, suit and ties on, we've all had breakfast, a good night's sleep. I think motivating in that environment is a lot easier. So getting people going and getting teams going, I think it's something that I lean on a lot that I learned in my athletic career.
Carl, I've got a question for you.
What's up, Kyle? My guy.
Great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to give back to your alma mater in this way. You mentioned how you got your first opportunity out of college through a mentor, Kevin Holloway. Can you talk about the significance of having those mentors, and how do you develop those relationships while you're still a student?
For sure. I think mentors are huge. And they've been extremely beneficial to my success. Sports did a lot for me, but one thing that it didn't necessarily allow me to do was to participate in a lot of events like this. So in the middle of the day, we might have workouts or treatment, or miss out on conferences that happen over the weekend. I know particularly the Thurgood Marshall conferences. All my classmates went to those and came back with tons of job offers. We couldn't go on the weekends because we had games. So I think you got to find ways to supplement that experience. And I think one of the biggest ways is mentorship. I think what Mr. Holloway did for me, just kind of seeing himself in me, and then taking an interest to kind of start that connection. But then it was on me to kind of foster that. So make sure you reach out, make sure you follow up, make sure you're kind of doing what's asked. He would say, bring me your resume at this time. Make sure you're doing those things. People who are where you want to be, they don't have a lot of time to be wasted. So taking advantage of that time when you do get it, I think is big. I'm trying to think what else that's important when it comes to mentorship. I will say one piece of mentorship that I think is underrated is taking advantage of your youth. So I think when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, you have access to a ton of people you don't even realize. If you just knock on somebody's door, send an email, or pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm a 20-year-old junior marketing major at North Carolina State University. I like what you do. I like the path you take, and I want to do what you do. Can I just get 20 minutes of your time to talk, to pick your brain? I want to shadow you for a day. I want to come meet with you. Those are things that you can't necessarily do when you're 25, 30 years old. So just taking advantage of that youth. And, people love to talk about themselves, love to talk about the work they do. And I think if you're a decent human being, you're going to take the time out for a college kid that's trying to better themselves. I did some of that. I thought I wanted to go into athletics after school. I went cold email people at Duke, say, I like what you do, I want to come meet with you. I did it at Carolina, I did it at NC State, and just taking advantage of that youth, but then being intentional and following up with the mentorship is huge. And yeah, that's all I'll say about mentorship.
Thanks, Carl.
No problem.
And I like that you mentioned, I think, and I could be wrong, but wasn't Kevin Holloway an athlete when he was at Central? I can't remember.
I don't think so, but I know he was. His whole family came through the School of Business. So.
Okay, yeah, I know he is. So yeah, so I just want to put that plug in there too. So he is a part of our board of visitors as well. He's chair of our trustees, and so we have a great relationship with him. We'll tell you another person that I know was in a football team when he was here, and that's Cornell Slade, and he's also with the School of Business visitors. Our board of visitors as well as the board of trustees. So there are a lot of athletes that come, out of the School of Business that definitely continue to give back. So just let you know, there's still opportunity for you to, come on and sit on some of these boards and continue to do the wonderful things you're doing. So any other questions from the students?
I thought of another question.
Okay.
One question I had, one of my goals is to climb the corporate ladder. And what are some ways or what are some tactics you think I could do that once I get with my company or corporation after graduation?
That's a good one. That's a good question. Let me think. I want to give you a good answer. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is saying yes to everything, and that doesn't mean anything that's unethical or immoral. Don't say yes to those things, but just say yes and raise your hand for the opportunity that comes at you. Whether it's a small task, a big task, something you don't know how you're going to do it, don't know how you're going to get the resources to do it, don't understand the topic at all. Just say yes, show up and give it your best effort with a good attitude, and you'd be surprised how things work out. A lot of times people block their own blessings just by being scared to take something on. So if you said you're a marketing major, if you find yourself and they want you to lead up a finance project, say yes, and I promise you'll figure it out as you go. These big companies and corporations have tons of money, tons of resources. You'll find a way to get it done. I promise you that. So the first thing I would think is say yes to everything. The second thing I would say, and I try to take this approach when I try anything new or start in new companies, try to make yourself bulletproof in a sense. So, and to make it, I guess, more transferable. When I came to Central, it was that's no secret, but it's very easy to lose your scholarship in college. So I knew if I lost my scholarship at North Carolina Central University, it was going to be because I was not good at football. I was going to make sure my grades were right. I was going to make sure I was in class on time. I was going to make sure I did community service. I was going to make sure I was involved on campus. And so I try to take the same approach to the corporate world. If I get fired, it's going to be because I just purely cannot do my job from a talent standpoint. I'm going to be involved in employee resource groups. I'm going to show up on time and be early. I'm going to stay late. I'm going to, go the extra mile. I'm going to be nice to people. I'm going to smile. I'm going to dress the part. So just make sure you do the small things right, and everything else pretty much work out. And if you do know if it doesn't work out, then it just wasn't meant for it to be. So those are two things I think will lead you to a successful corporate career. And again, I'm not that old. I've only been out of school for like 5 years, so take that with a grain of salt. I'm not at the top yet.
It hasn't been 5 years. What in the world? Time flies. Good gracious. But what you just said, you just hit the nail on the head on do the little things. And I say this all the time, and that was so me as a student as well. It's that, if I'm going to get let go, it's because I could not do the job, not because I didn't put my all into the work. So that right there is an awesome word. And I thank you, Carl, for saying that, because that's so important. Do all the little things you need to do.
Yeah, you show up, it'll work out for sure.
I actually have a question as well. Hey, Kyle. Miss you. I'm not young. I'm class of 94, and Kyle, don't say anything. I think, Kyle, were you just coming in? Wait a minute. When I was there, I bothered him yeah. So I played basketball, and I was one of his, well, you can say Kyle was almost like a mentee to me. I went on and got a master's in sports management. So yeah, he guided me in that direction as well from NC State. So I appreciate that. One of the questions that I have, and I don't know if you experienced this yet, as far as being a minority, and I can speak of myself in the sports world. My daughter is now, she's a double major, psychology and sports management, where in her program at Catawba College, she's one of 2 minorities in the program. So even in the corporate world, how much diversity do you see? Are, like you said, you know, if you give your all, you know, you push through it and so forth. Have you ever seen someone, I know you're not a female, but witnessed a minority female of yourself, like feeling like you just hit that glass ceiling and it's just hard? And how can you overcome it if you see yourself kind of like in that position? I know I've been there before, but I'm just curious as far as the male side of it.
To be transparent, I don't think I've experienced that, especially not at my young age, but I've heard many experiences of it happening. I think at a younger age, you don't necessarily hit a glass ceiling, but you might be, you might experience transgressions that you don't recognize. You might experience underhanded racism, call it what it is. You might experience those type of things on a you know, smaller scale, but nothing that, from my experience at least, that's career impacting. So I'll stop there. I don't want to speak on experience that I haven't had, but I know it does exist, for sure.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I just was wondering, have you seen that yet? So I appreciate it.
I will, I guess, to continue the conversation. I have seen. I don't think it's a career ceiling, but I have seen what they call like kind of good old boys clubs or places or organizations that you can't get into unless you have a way in. For example, the company I'm at now, McKinsey Company, is an extremely difficult company to get into. I applied multiple times, got denied just pure applying, and then I had to actually refer from somebody to actually even go through the process. So to me, it speaks to, if I have the same resume, it's gonna go through the same interview process, but I have to literally know somebody in the company to get in. That means there's a flaw there. So there are definitely things like that, I think, minorities, people of color, women face. And I can imagine you facing a lot in the sports world, by being a traditionally male-dominated industry. So I do think small things like that do happen.
Okay. Well, thank you for being aware.
I think that's a great point too, and I think maybe along those lines, did you say that you interned or while you were a student, or no?
No,
Okay.
I didn't intern to being an athlete, but I think if any athletes are on this or watch this in the future, I think you have to understand that you're at a disadvantage in that, and you need to just increase your touch points with companies. So whether that's going to Zoom webinars, whether that's, if it's a company in the area, finding a way to go to their hiring events or diversity events or career days, you got to increase your touch points. You can't just apply code anymore, especially with no internship experience. You got to be able to say, I've been in your face 5 times. This is what I want to do. This is why I want to be here. Just make sure you get in these company spaces, and it makes it easier from a student athlete perspective, because it is difficult. But I do think companies are addressing that and figuring out ways. Maybe a plug for my previous employer, Accenture. They actually have a student athlete track, so it's designed for people that can't go through the traditional recruiting experience. So if you can't, go to the interviews on the weekends or go to these career days or travel because of your sport, they've got alternative methods for you to get involved in the company. And they work around your schedule. So they might have 9 or 10 o'clock meetings or 9 or 10 o'clock webinars or events for the student athletes that can't make it during those midday or those late afternoon times. So figuring out what companies support student athletes and finding ways to get involved there, I think is beneficial for student athletes that can't necessarily participate in those traditional internship opportunities.
You've given me some good notes, because this is something I want to look into, definitely, because I think that's going to be a great tool for our athletes to have. So we will get on creating that list.
And if I've still got some contacts, if you want some names that are at Accenture, I'd love to connect you.
Yes, please. That'd be great. That would be great. And so I was asking you that question just to kind of set up for, what prepared you for kind of that corporate entry, or did it take a minute to kind of get your bearings on, the politics, the environment, the, life outside of college? What was that like?
I think it's an adjustment for anybody transition out of college to a corporate environment. I think the experiences that probably prepared me, one from a kind of a content perspective in terms of the subject matter. Accounting in one sense is accounting. So if you can do it in school, understand the fundamentals and the basics. As long as you master that, when you get to the job, they're going to train you. So if you know debits and credits, not to get too deep into accounting, if you know debits and credits and balance sheet and income statement, whatever else you need to figure out, they're going to teach you. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But in terms of, you mentioned politics, that's kind of it's a game you have to play. But I think going to HBCU and maybe being a minority, you understand that that's a barrier that's probably in front of you. So you quickly figure out how to navigate that. And I was blessed enough to have mentors that put me in positions or kind of guided me when I got to these places. Say, hey, this is how you need to act. This is how you need to move. These are the things you do. These things you can't do. So seeking out that mentorship and understanding kind of the space you're in, I think is how most people will have success in navigating that corporate environment, especially coming from HBCU.
What's some of your adversities that you had to go through, like when you had to make that step into the corporate world?
That's a good question. I think adversity. I think the two things come to mind. First, for me, from a student athlete standpoint, I was in school. I was my identity kind of was around football. It was Carl, the football player. That was kind of who I was and what I was tied to, and it's not a bad thing at all. But when you step into the corporate world, it's a good conversation starter, but it's not your identity anymore. And for me, I struggle with being in spaces where people didn't play sports, being in spaces where people didn't understand what working late or working hard looked like, or understanding kind of the no excuses mentality that comes with sports, or even the small things, just talking about sports, going to company happy hours or company events where sports isn't the topic of conversation. That's not who you are anymore. And kind of separating myself from that and figuring out what am I good at, what do I enjoy, who am I going to be in this next phase of life was a struggle for me. But eventually you master it, you figure out your lane and kind of where you plug into these companies in these spaces. And then the second piece of adversity I faced was kind of starting back over. So I think if you think kind of your matriculation through life, you go from kindergartner to the top of your elementary school in 4th grade or 5th grade, in middle school. Once you get 8th grade, you're the king or the helm of middle school and high school. You're a senior, you run the school. College, you come as a freshman and you leave this big bad senior. And corporate's the same exact way. So I left Central. I had a great experience, as I said before. Many connections, was a known face. I'll say that. But you go to corporate, I'm at this 40,000 people company. I'm just another person. You got to figure out how you're going to be successful, how you're going to climb that ladder, how you're going to navigate all the things we're talking about now. Just starting over from that aspect was difficult, not necessarily the easiest route. But I think as long as you kind of look at it from a long-term perspective, understanding if you want to be, you said you're marketing, you want to be chief marketing officer at a company, figuring out what those steps look like. In 2 years, I need to accomplish this. In 5 years, I need to accomplish this. 10, 20, 30, just keeping that long-term mindset. I think you'll be fine once you get to the corporate world.
That's great. No, thank you so much, Carl. Are there any other questions? I know Carl is a busy guy, so we don't want to keep him too long, but are there any other questions for Carl? So what do you, I mean, I have a question, and I know I always kind of hate question, but like, what's kind of the plan for you? Like in terms of, if you're looking out maybe 5 years from now, like what do you kind of see yourself doing?
That's a good question. So 5 years, let me think. So just to give, I guess, more background context, in consulting, it's more of you just try a bunch of things. You get your foot in a lot of different industries, doing a lot of different type of skills. So I think what I'm focused on now is just building kind of my toolkit, being, whether that's financial analysis, whether that's client interaction, whether that's something small as speaking or strategy work or risk work, whatever that might be. So just building a robust and rounded out toolkit to be able to eventually leave consulting and find a home. I think if I say in 5 years, I want to do something in sports. I miss sports. I miss football every day. If I ever found a job that gave me that same feeling or that same itch of football, I would chase it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jason Wright. He's the president of the Washington football team. He actually came from my company. So an exit like that, but maybe more on the collegiate level, would be huge for me. Being able to kind of serve in that same leadership, kind of CEO of an athletic department, but maybe not going as an athletic director. I don't think that'd probably be the best exit, but going in maybe a senior or high level leadership role in the athletic department, and being able to use my business experience, my corporate experience, to lead in that environment, I think would be a great exit for me in the 5 to 10 year time frame.
I love it. I love it. So we'll continue to keep our eyes and ears open too, for those opportunities. So it's good to know that that's what you're looking at. So, but thank you. Are there any other questions? And then I'm just going to have Carl give us maybe just some parting words or some bit of motivation to get you guys going. Any other questions before I let Carl or ask Carl to close us out? All right, go ahead, Carl. If you just want to give just some words of encouragement, because you've been here. It's crazy times, so we want to make sure that we're doing the things we need to do in the right ways. So,
for sure. Try to make this a good one. It honestly would be something I touched on a little earlier. I think when I was going through school in the School of Business, a lot of times people, like I said before, would come back and they'd have these CEO of this company, like I think the CEO of Dell came to speak, like people that were doing amazing things, but I just couldn't relate to. They didn't come from the background I came from. They sometimes didn't look like me. So I think the message I want to give is, I'm just like you. I was the kid in the back of class. I wasn't super enthused about academics. I wasn't a 4.0 guy. I had relatively good grades because when I just showed up. I distinctly remember, I think, is Miss Graham still there? Laura Graham? And I probably shouldn't say this, but I know for a fact one semester I fell asleep in every single one of our classes, but I just made sure I showed up. I sat in the front. I wore a shirt and tie some days. Like I did half the battle just being there and being present, and it ended up working out. And she's a great teacher, and we've had some communications over like LinkedIn and email, so we still have a relationship. But I think just showing up is half the battle. So when you see people in these roles, don't think that it's unattainable. I think a lot of times HBCUs or smaller schools might be slighted in that aspect, but I've been in rooms like the team I'm working on now. As a guy, is a medical doctor, which I decided to come back to business. My manager, he went to Harvard. I've been in rooms where I remember distinctly at Accenture, my first 2 weeks I was in a room, a table of 4 of us. It was Princeton, Yale, and I think NYU. So just understand the skills you're building, the tools you're building, relationships you're building. It's giving you all you need. There's no better experience than the North Carolina Central University experience. Don't feel inadequate or slighted in any aspect. What you're getting is all you need. And when your time comes to leave the nest, you'll be fully prepared, I promise.
I love it. You give me all kinds of good little things to copy. What you have, what you have. I love it. I'll credit you. Don't worry.
And one last thing, North Carolina Central University, the athletic department and School of Business truly changed my life. So if there's ever anything I can do for anybody, whether it's you, Ms. Williams, Kyle, anybody on this call, I'll give you my cell phone number, my email. We can Zoom every day. Till we get it right. Whatever you need from me, I'll always make it happen. And if I can, I'll find somebody that can. I promise you that.
Oh. Well, we thank you. We thank you tremendously so much. And we're going to hold you to that. So
however I can assist, please let me know.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carl. And thank you everyone for joining us for our virtual lunch and learn. And yeah, join us again this time, maybe next month, and we'll close out our series. But again, Carl, we thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. And we're going to talk to you real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for swimming. See you guys.
Take care.
Thanks, Carl.